Hi, I'm J. Elizabeth Clark, Professor of English at LaGuardia Community College, and I am delighted to welcome Dr. Tameka Battle, Professor of Community Health and Wellness, who is here to talk about high impact practices at LaGuardia. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm just delighted that we're going to have this chance to chat.
Awesome.
So tell me a little bit about your experience with HIPS. How do you use it in your work? How did you come to it? I know you've written about it.
Yes.
So how has it influenced your work?
Wow. Oh, okay. So my engagement with high impact practices began with the college's first year seminar. So as a new faculty member, I was assigned to teach health sciences first year seminar.
That happens a lot. That people were assigned to do it and then had figured it out.
Yeah, so we just celebrated the 10th year of first year seminar here at the college, and so I was happy to be part of that, inaugural group of faculty. So so I started my interest and actually practicing and embedding HIP into my pedagogy and first year seminar.
That's great. I think it's really interesting because I was in the inaugural faculty with ePortfolio, right? And I think there's something really special about having been there from the beginning.
Absolutely.
And then seeing it grow and change and, waves of different moments of practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you came into it because you were part of that beginning faculty setting that up.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk just a little bit about what it was like to get HIPS into that course from the beginning? Because it wasn't HIPS by the way, like by the way we're doing HIPS. It was, we're going to create this as a HIPS. So that's very different.
Yes, very different. And I want to say that it did happen very organically, right? So being a new, junior faculty, I really wanted to hear from the students. I really wanted to focus on, reflective, responses from the students. I wanted to incorporate what I felt was very important at the time, which is culturally relevant pedagogy. I wanted to dive deeper into HIPS because I looked at the research that talked about how HIPS are very, very beneficial for students that are underrepresented in academia, for students that are high risk. And so I felt that it was important to highlight the voices of students. I didn't know how I was going to do it, right? So you have all of this going on in terms of this is something that has been researched. It has been proven to be successful in engaging students in the classroom. And so I really had to think about which topic I wanted to focus on for students, to allow their voices to push through. And it was the lesson on cultural competency. And so I felt that cultural competency is an important skill for health science majors. It's a very important skill for healthcare practitioners. And so I kind of like interweave that into my practice and didn't realize how successful it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I often talk about ePortfolios as it's not a cookie cutter, right? Like what works here at LaGuardia isn't going to work at other places, and you've got to really fit it into the students who are there, right? It's not like random generic student. It's like the students in front of you and what do they need?
Absolutely. I had fun doing it. I made sure that what I did in the classroom, my practices reflected, peer engagement. I wanted to also honor that students come with lived experiences, right? They come from different walks of life, different experiences, whether it's work experiences, other school experiences, and really how can you embed that into the classroom? Yeah. Right. And so I felt that was really important.
I love that we're really thinking about meeting students where they're at.
Absolutely.
I think that's so important.
Absolutely. There's a lot of power dynamics in the classroom. And so, I try to sort of like even the dynamics, right? So it is interchangeable, right? So you're here to learn something from me. I'm here to learn something from you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important.
Yeah, it's not a transaction, you to them and what they want to know. It's a living organism that is changing and growing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so how would you define high impact practices? Take us through, because Some of the folks that I have interviewed in this series are deeply embedded in HIPS in their classrooms, but they haven't published necessarily on HIPS. And you've really not only done the work in the classroom, but also published about it. So how would you define HIPS?
So HIPS, how I would define it is intentional structured learning, right? So you have to really be intentional when you are embedding HIPS into your curriculum. It needs to, you have to have student buy-in, you have to have student interaction, and really it has to be meaningful, right? Students have to feel a level of trust in order to engage in this process. And so one of the ways in which I did that was having this conversation about cultural competency, how it's important, why it is important. And then the buy-in was being vulnerable myself, right? Sharing with my students, what culture I'm from, and then started to, use surveys and anonymous reflections using, Blackboard discussion, and it looks very different now than it did many years ago when it was just the in-person, classroom setting. And so for me, it was making sure that I was able to connect the students' personal experiences with the curriculum, why first year seminar even existed, right? We want you to be successful, particularly in health sciences. We want you to achieve candidacy. We want you to get into, get a jump start into your career. And so I would really stress that intentionality on student, with student engagement. Again, making sure that students understand why I'm here and why we're doing this. Why is high impact practices so successful? And that is really so that you can really carve a pathway for students to get to their final destination, their career path.
I love your emphasis on the intentionality, because I would argue, and I think George Koo would agree if he was joining us in our little conversation, that you could have a first year seminar that isn't a high impact practice, right? It's not just like checking off, yes, we have a first year seminar. It's how that curriculum, that experience is designed and what is part of that. So I love that emphasis on the intentionality and how that plays out, and also change, right? The change over time.
Yes, you have to be intentional.
How has it? So you, in your last answer, you suggested that it's changed from what it used to look like. How has it shifted?
So we're now we have COVID-19, of course, and how we had to flip classrooms to a virtual setting. Something gets lost in transition when you are in a virtual environment versus you are in a physical environment with students. And so a lot of that connection can get lost. You can see where some students may not be as engaged as other students. And so that, again, stresses the intentionality of it. So you have to really be intentional in the ways in which you're going to engage students. And so I've done polls, I've done breakout rooms, I've done, raise hands, I've done drop it in the chat, a lot of students trying to get that interaction. And I will tell you, students are very receptive to it. I get a lot of direct messages. They really don't want everyone else to see their responses, and that's fine. But you have to really be intentional, because I will tell you, embedding high impact practices into your curricula, it takes time. It's something that is a lot of work. It's nothing that could be done overnight. You're not going to see, you're not going to see those student successes in one semester. You have to do it over time, and you get better at it, right? You get better at it. Every, classroom environment is different. It sort of functions different. It takes on its own identity, different than other, courses. And so you have to really be intentional in how you're going to reach students.
Yeah, I also think it's been very interesting to me, because I've interviewed a number of our colleagues across the curriculum, and that everyone really describes it as growth for themselves, right? Yes. That it is the fluency that one brings to the classroom in HIPS is something that you grow into. Absolutely. So maybe you try it the first time, but immediately you're aware, here's what I want to tweak, here's what I want to
Absolutely.
change. And so the practice is continually evolving, both in response to who's in the classroom, but also as we become more comfortable with that intentionality and that design, and we kind of understand the shape that hips are taking in the classroom.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how have students responded?
So at first, students were very hesitant because, again, when you think about, academia and the power dynamics in the classroom, and so it changed me because I had to be vulnerable as well, right? And show that to my students, show that authenticity. And so at first, students were very much so like, when you think about, cultural competency, you think about sharing, the most intimate details of who you are in terms of your culture, what makes you you. It can be, it's personal, right? And so getting students to understand and making the connection, why this is so important to you, it is just as equally important to a patient. And so I had to make that connection, and they're like, oh, so, going over just different scenarios, taking all the years of experience that I have worked as a healthcare practitioner. And then students started to, over time, they started to open up. And so I didn't start with surveys asking students, about, why cultural competency is really important for a healthcare practitioner. It was over time. It had to happen organically. So at first there was some hesitancy. And then, Professor Battle had to sort of like put her hair up and say, hey, I was where you were, right? I was a student. I'm a first generation graduate, come from a single parent home. I had to work throughout my whole entire academic career. And so that was relatable to students. And I think that's where you start to see high impact practices take shape, when students can see you in them.
That's so interesting, because you're the first person who has named authenticity as a significant component of what you bring to the classroom. And I think that's so true. Like, students want to see you and know you as a person and understand your relationship to what you're asking them to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's definitely authenticity is the piece.
You have to be. You have to stand up and be your true self.
Yeah,
absolutely. They will see right through it, and they will never open up.
No, never. That's true. Never. All right. So what's challenging? You named that this work is hard, and it is. And I would name that this work is time consuming.
Yes.
I think we would both name that it's worth it.
Yes.
But what challenges have you faced along the way?
Ooh.
What's challenging about it?
I will tell you that, again, it's that initial reluctance that the students had. You have to really create this safe and inclusive environment for students. And it's really,
because they're really taking a risk.
They're taking a risk, right? So I always tell students that when I'm teaching first year seminar, I typically have a profile of 3 different types of students. You have your first student from high school that's calling you miss, ma'am, miss, right? You have folks who are, they may have experience or a degree from another, discipline, and they're coming back into the classroom. And you have folks who are just, picking up where they left off.
Right.
And so really, creating that balance in the classroom can be very challenging, because everyone is in a very different place at that time. And so it was really, how can I connect this to what students are going to be doing beyond first year seminar? So connecting this to their clinical experience, their capstone course, to service learning projects. So for students that were in the nutrition and culinary management program, connecting it to farmers market, looking at students in the recreational therapy program, connecting it to what they'll be doing in their clinical field work in the long-term care facility. So it's really showing students the end, the destination at that moment, because HIPs always continue, right? But letting them know for the duration of this class, this is why it is important. And so,
and how it's connected,
and how it is connected throughout the end to your last class.
Yeah.
And then it starts to click. But again, you have to articulate it in ways that students can understand, and they can see that connection. They can see what they bring into the classroom setting and how that's going to transpire when they walk out of the doors of LaGuardia.
Well, and sometimes I think it doesn't click in the moment, right? They're doing it, they're following it, they want to do a great job on whatever you have asked them to do, but then later when they come back to it, when, all of a sudden they're in that follow-up experience and they're like, oh, yes, like I see this, like they would not use the word longitudinal, but we would use that word, right? Exactly. That longitudinal growth.
Yes. And it is so rewarding when I go to the pinning ceremonies for the, registered nurse, or you go to, you see students in the recreational therapy pinning ceremony, they say, I now understand it. Now I'm able to, now they see the value in high impact practices, and they're going to be well on their way in their careers, and they're going to have all of the skills that they've learned from first year seminar and throughout their whole entire academic journey here.
Yeah, because it's really set them up on a path for where they're headed.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So what other HIPs are you interested in playing around with, or have you played around with? I know first year experience has been your focus.
Yes, first year's experience has been my focus. In the recreational therapy program, we do have another faculty member that uses HIPs for our capstone course, our experiential learning course, which is our clinical field work. I would love to see HIPs in like research, right? Doing research in health sciences, right? In the health sciences field, like undergraduate research. I would love to see HIPs in digital storytelling, right? So I was part of, being the faculty that was, involved deeply with ePortfolio. So in our entire curriculum, we use ePortfolio for every single program course. And so students get to document their progression from first year seminar until the capstone. But I would love to see them tell a story, right? We have them do the about me and they revise it. But I would love to hear their voice. I would love to hear their voice. What's written in there about me, I would love to hear,
like as a video,
like so digital storytelling, and how they have progressed from a student taking first year seminar all the way to that capstone course.
It's interesting. I was doing another interview yesterday, and we were talking about how right before COVID, we thought that we kind of peaked digitally, and then that COVID period sent all of us, students and faculty, back into maybe some past practices because we were just trying to get through. And it's kind of interesting the way some old things are coming back, right? So like we haven't talked about digital storytelling in a while, but it's coming back into the conversation in some really interesting ways.
And I think it's so important, right? Because that period of time really shifted, really the landscape of higher education, just students, how students are approaching learning, the value of a degree. And so I would be interested in hearing their voices.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And to do some more work with intentionally capturing their stories on video.
Absolutely.
All right. What advice would you offer a colleague who's thinking about taking on HIPs? So for our colleagues who are maybe haven't started this work or are just getting started.
Okay. I would direct them to the instructional, the tape that we had last week, right? Where you talked about like we need more faculty. I would really hope that more faculty will delve into this work. But I will tell any faculty, like start small. Like it's just, increments, right? Start off small. You're not going to get it done in all the, semester, but being intentional and embedding at least one practice or one aspect of how you can get that, how you can increase student engagement, how you can sort of elicit student feedback, whether it's through surveys, whether it's through reflection pieces, and then, build your way up, right? So just starting off very small, you will see the impact in the end. So don't take this large, massive, HIP movement and how effective it has been, but just start small.
I think that is great advice. Just start small and we'll see that exponential growth.
Absolutely. And if all of us do a little bit and start small, then we're going to make a tremendous impact.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It has been such a delight to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making the time.
All righty.